next guest is Coach Benjamin Sanders, assistant coach in the G League, Brooklyn, Chicago, Houston affiliates. Recently involved with the US preparation for the Nigerian men's team prior to the Olympics. I was really blessed to be involved in a coaching philosophy group with Ben, and he was leading it. It was a great eye-opener for me, and I'm really excited to have him on board. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me. That's quite the intro. I
got to give you that respect. I got to give you that respect, man. I got to give you that respect. Look, I'm gonna dive right in. I'm gonna get right at you, and you know it's fresh in everybody's memories at the moment. Obviously, the Olympics, great for America, good for Australia, with what happened on both sides of the pond for us. But how does, I guess, diving into that preparation side of things with Nigeria, guys coming in from all over the place, short turnaround time, couple of practice games. Where does the coaching group start? Where do you start? Do you start offense, defense? Where do you start with that sort of thing?
It's an interesting experience, that's for sure. I think kind of going back and reliving that experience in my head, one of the good things we did was we had a massive group come into camp. We had probably 40 players all said and done, but
wow.
Week one, I think we had about 30 guys. Brought in some young guys, some long shots who were definitely not going to make the Olympic squad, but guys that you want in the organization, and some of which will be playing in Afrobasket in the coming weeks. Some guys playing in Afrobasket qualifiers down the line. Some of them were young college players who we expect to have a bright future for the Nigerian national team. And in week one, we were able to kind of focus on those guys, the ones who are not necessarily going to the Olympics. And in doing so, we had kind of a trial run of how we wanted to install things, how we wanted to, get to our buildups and get where we wanted to be. And then that way, the second week, once our NBA guys started showing up, we were able to kind of go with or review things with the players who had been there. Our staff had already been through those reps one time teaching it the week before. Our second week did not look very different than our first week. The competition level and the talent level really increased. But we had already been through those reps as a staff. And I can't say enough about kind of rehearsing some of that stuff. I've been on staffs that rehearse a daily practice before you even get out there with the players.
Okay.
And that kind of thing pays off. I don't know if I'm 100% a believer in running through the entire practice, but sometimes you have to do it, and especially at the start of the season. So for me, I think that's what we really benefited from was we had those reps. Offensively, it was how are we going to get out and run? Our running habits are first and foremost. What are we doing when the play breaks down? We kind of had a little bit of I don't know if you call it a secondary break, but that's kind of what it was, that we were just trying to make sure we were initiating offense with movement, getting our first paint touch right away, that type of thing. And then defensively, man, I can't even really tell you what we did. We just had a bunch of guys who were willing to guard. We could have taught defense any way we wanted to.
Yeah.
And these guys were going to go out there and guard their asses off because they took a lot of pride in it. And you could see through our Olympic performance that we were much better defensively than we were offensively.
Oh, definitely. You know, like when I watched that game against Australia, the practice game, you know, the first one and more so in the second one, once you got to the tournament, it was you could see Australia's adjustment to the athleticism that Nigeria showed on defense was incredible. Shots were being blocked at the rim. Guys were being challenged in the paint constantly. You know, guys crashing the boards. You could definitely see that they were flying around more than definitely the Australian team expected. And you could see some adjustments there from Brian and the group as well, which was pretty obvious.
Yeah, that's the end of the floor. We had to be the aggressors. If you look at the guys we had on our roster, they were mostly role players in the NBA. They weren't the go-to guys. They weren't the guys who, when the play breaks down, they're going to go get you a bucket. But they were guys who knew how to play their asses off. They knew how to bring it every possession. And I don't think you could question their effort the entire time.
No.
I think we're headed in the right direction. You can see our win over US in the warm-up games. The exhibition games was a highlight for us. Is kind of a sign of things to come now. We've got to work on consistency a little bit. And that's one thing you find a lot of successful teams at the FIBA level have, right? Your Spain's, your Australia's, your Argentina for the longest time. They consistently played year in and year out, understood FIBA basketball. When they get away from the NBA, they know exactly what they're doing, and there's that cohesiveness. And I hope down the line we'll see that with the Nigerian program as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Shift gears to obviously your time on G League staff, and I guess a question that's probably pretty poignant for, I guess, us at a junior level here in Australia, and definitely in some of our programs is and no doubt affects G League teams as well, is that balance between winning and development. And I guess I pose the question: can you do both, Coach? Can you win and develop great players, or does one have to suffer on either side of the coin?
I think you can do both. I really do. I think you have to be good at remembering your priorities from time to time. The G League's interesting because it's one of the very few leagues where development comes before winning. This is now 2 seasons ago. It was my second season with the Windy City Bulls in the Chicago organization. We didn't win enough. We were floating around 500 before the season was called for COVID, and I would deem that year a pretty successful year due to our player development. We had multiple guys who went on within a couple years to get NBA contracts. Guys like PJ Dozier and Max Strus, who signed their first NBA deal just a year or two later, and you feel so much pride and joy for those players in that moment. And that to me feels as good as winning a lot of times. Yeah. And but what it comes down to is kind of your daily decision. Do you jump out there and go an hour and get these guys some work, or do we need to keep them fresh for the game the next day? Does that change from week to week? At the beginning of the season, you're probably doing a lot more on the court and maybe sacrifice a little bit of rest in order to get those reps in. But as the season goes on, there's a lot to do with, or there's a lot of benefit from keeping your guys fresh. When I was in RGV, which is actually in the Houston organization, that's how I met Mitch. I've known Mitch for years now. Yeah. And we had one of the most talented G League rosters I've ever seen. And it was not about necessarily improving these guys. It was more about showcasing these guys.
Okay. So
we valued keeping them fresh more than anything else. And Monte Morris was on that squad. So was Daniel House, guys who really just needed the reps, and they showcased themselves in games, and they're both doing really well at the NBA level now. And then the following season, my first season in Windy City, we didn't have as many kind of NBA hopefuls. And so it was more about, we got to get the most out of the season to make sure these guys are prepared for their next opportunity, whether it's NBA or overseas. And harder practices. We had a lot less rest. That had a lot to do with our head coach and just his preferences, and I saw a lot of value in that as well. So my third year in the G League under Damian Cotter,
Yep.
We found a healthy balance that I felt was probably the right way of doing it. Not that either of the other ways was wrong, but maybe the right way for me to do it, which was make sure you're constantly pouring into your players, and no amount of losing or winning is going to stop you from consistently getting on the floor and sweating with those guys and showing them that their development is the priority.
Yeah, definitely. I think people to get those questions through, and we'll start opening up that floor a little bit more for some stuff with Benjamin. But your philosophy then, where does your philosophy sit then in development? Are we looking at, like, especially at a professional level, are we looking about how they can win off the ball? Can they break their player down? Or is it kind of more sort of pertinent towards an individual player as to their sort of role, what their potential role is in the future? Are they a great defender? Are they going to be a great defender? How do you sort of come up with the development philosophy per player or per group?
So I think one thing we do as coaches a lot is we try and fix everybody's weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I think there's some to that, obviously. But I also think we need to focus more on their strengths, strengthening their strengths, right? So
yeah,
let's say we know a player is great at getting downhill with his right hand.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people, their instinct is, well, let's make sure he can go left as well. And there's something to that, right? But also, how can we get them to their right more? Like, how can we find more ways for them to get there? And I think there's a lot of ways to get creative with that kind of stuff. But one example I think of is I coached against Pascal Siakam when he was in college, right? He's with I believe he's still with the Raptors, right? And he's had a hell of an NBA career. He's overachieved so far. And I remember the scouting report with him was, we know he's going to his right hand. Every single time he's going to go to his right hand. So we're going to sit on his right hand. We're going to double team him when he catches in the high post. And you know what that guy did? He got to his right hand every single time.
If you can't go right, just go righter. That's the answer. If you can't go right, just go more righter. Yeah.
So I think there's something to that is helping guys find more ways to get to their strengths. I think there's a lot to do with that. But the other thing I think about is not everybody's meant to be the star in their next location, right? It's tough sometimes at the G League level when you're working with young Americans who are probably not quite an NBA prospect. They're going to have to go overseas. Americans are expected when they go overseas to be the man. Yeah, definitely. So you gotta teach them, how can they get a bucket, right? How can they create an advantage on their own? How can they go be the playmaker and be the star, right? And that's conflicts a little bit when you want to prepare them for the NBA, because they're not necessarily going to be that guy at the NBA. Yeah. So my personal feeling is, first you teach them how to be a really great role player. Okay. How can they play off the catch, attack bad closeouts? If you can't do that, I don't see how you're going to find success. But you got to be able to attack closeouts. Yep. And then from that, you can start building and giving them just little tools here and there to all of a sudden, maybe you're not attacking a closeout, but you are attacking a set defense. And how are you the one creating the advantage, right? As we all know, offense at the simplest, in its simplest form, is create an advantage, maintain an advantage, right? Yes. Yeah. Create an advantage and then increase the advantage. So there's a lot of players who can play off of an advantage that was already created. And again, that's playing off of closeouts. That's coming off of DHOs, that type of stuff. And then you've got your players who can be the ones to create the advantage for you. So like I said, it's starting with maintaining an advantage and then building on their skill set so that they are able to create an advantage. Some guys, some of these shooters creating an advantage just by sitting in the corner, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one that you can't work on enough is shooting. So
and I was just going to say that, shooting, you talk about shooting, that, it's the most important skill. I always say, you win games by how many points you got on the board, not many points you haven't scored. And breaking down a player, talking to a player about their development. Are we using film for you? Is it film really? Are you prefer to be film based? Do you want to be on court with them? Is it a bit of a mixture? How does it sort of sit for you in that G League environment?
The G League, I think, is very similar to the NBA in that film is of utmost priority. Like everything we do is film, right? The more individualized you can make it, the better. I don't know a single team in the G League that is not having players sit down one-on-one with their coaches and watching film. You're able to criticize more in those moments one-on-one. You're able to get specific and really teach in those moments. It's very important in your player development to see that. And it's not just in pointing out mistakes and where they can improve. Sometimes it's showing them ways that they're successful and reminding them that this is when you're at your best, right?
Yeah.
This is when you're helping the team the most. This is what we need to see you do more consistently. Most players you're going to see make a good play, a game or two.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of forget that making that same play, making that same read is an option. But there's a lot of players out there who could just keep exploiting the same weak points in the defense over and over. And they just need to see it. You got to be able to point them out. So the other advantageous thing about film is it doesn't stress your legs. It's not wearing you out to the same physically, right? I think sometimes we discount how much just being locked in general in any capacity, whether it's film or anything else. Sometimes we don't take into consideration how that affects players' fatigue as well. But film will fatigue their body physically so much more than just sitting and watching film. So if you need a lighter day, maybe it's just shots and film. That's a common thing where we're still having a productive day. We're still teaching, we're still learning, but we're not wearing them out for the next game. Yeah,
I like it. I know I've got a question here already, and I'll get straight to questions now. When you have to talk to a player maybe about something they need to improve in, obviously sometimes people take feedback fantastic, some people don't. How do you approach a player that's maybe a little prickly on some negative, let's call it improvement feedback rather than negative feedback? How do you approach that player?
So I think the key to those conversations is building that relationship beforehand.
Yep.
It's really hard to criticize anybody or give anybody feedback if you don't have a relationship with them.
Yep.
You gotta put in the time to build relationships. To me, the easiest way is get on the floor with them. It's like Mitch said, sweat equity. I think that's some cliche, but it's a real thing. Like, get out there and sweat with them. And once you do, and the workout's over, that player, chances are he's going to sit there in a chair or bleachers or on the floor right by the court immediately afterwards. And if you can just sit with them right then and there, you'll find that that's usually a moment they'll open up and chat with you. And it's a good time to talk about family, living situation, what else, if you know what else they're interested in. I love to figure out what sports teams they're into, and whether it's football or anything else really. And then you can start like, hey man, I saw your team lost yesterday. And that's a simple little thing, right? But it shows that you remembered what team they root for. It shows that you can be playful with them a little bit. And in building those relationships, now when I come back and say, hey man, I need you to do this, or we need you to do this, or it would benefit you to do this, they know it's coming from a place of caring. It's you've invested in them, you've poured yourself into them, and you're not just somebody who's trying to use them to get your next job or to get your paycheck or anything like that. They know you care and want to see them succeed. And players can tell if you care or not.
I agree.
They're not
100%.
Players are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And we as coaches love to think we know exactly what that player is thinking.
Yeah.
Or what that player is doing in their free time. That we know the reason their attitude is a certain way. Man, we don't know that stuff. We don't know what's going on with them, just like they don't know what's going on with us, right? But if you take some time to kind of dig into that and understand, maybe they're more likely to say, hey, coach, my mom's struggling with something and I'm just not in the right place. Well, now you know necessarily not to coach that guy especially hard that day. Or on the flip side, you may know when other guys are ready and hungry and you can coach them a little bit harder. So again, the better you know them, the better you're going to be able to reach them. I think that setting that foundation is number one. Yeah,
definitely. What's some of the I guess the cultural philosophy around that Nigerian team? The question has come in here from Connor. What are some of the key cultural mindset points that sort of, I guess, that were put to that team prior to the tournament, or I guess philosophies on offense and defense that they had there with the Nigerian team that you know of?
So it's interesting that a national team is just a different setting. Like there's nothing like it. It's very much, there's kind of culture built in a way. You're all representing the same thing. You all care about the name on the front of the jersey differently than you do when you're just there for a paycheck. There's just a different type of pride, right?
Yeah.
We didn't really have to focus too much on building that culture because everybody was there for the right reasons. Everybody wanted to see Nigeria succeed.
Yeah.
And really be the start of something special. But as far as X's and O's, we really wanted to stress that we were going to be a team that was going to play from the baseline out.
Okay. Yeah.
We were going to throw it to the post and post splits, a lot like Mitch was saying the Golden State Warriors do, where our head coach is in it for the Golden State Warriors. So it was built on that quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's really what it boiled down to is let's run, let's get to our spots, let's play with pace and play from the baseline out. And then we would have liked to seen our offensive performance be a bit better. Defensively, we knew we were going to be the aggressors. We were going to turn up the pressure. We were going to make it uncomfortable. We were going to be physical. FIBA allows for a different level of physicality than the NBA does. And I was pleasantly surprised with our NBA guys saying, all right, let's go. Let's get physical. So we didn't have to do much to get these guys bought in and ready to play. Our culture was great. Great leadership from our vets.
Yeah. That always helps. Always helps.
It goes a long way. It really does. And also, let's be real. Our head coach was a former head coach of the Lakers and the Cavs, and his coach Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. Stuff like, the buy-in is there.
Yeah, they're buying in. As soon as he walks in the door, they're buying in. I guess a good one for a group here, as Anna's asked, is that how do we keep our teams motivated during isolation? You might have had a little bit of this during last year with the COVID interruptions. How do you keep your team motivated, or how do you keep your guys motivated during ISO?
I think that's such a tough one. Like, this is such an unprecedented time, right? Like, none of us are going to be good at this.
Yeah.
In general, I found you can keep players more engaged anytime you are talking about them specifically.
Yeah.
You want a player to lock in on the film, show clips of him or her, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got film of them, show them. If you've got film of people you want them to model their game after, show them. If you've got clips of, hey, here's a particular action or a particular skill that I think would benefit you. Show them like little stuff like that that's tailored to them. Players can tell when you're making an effort to accommodate them, and so it goes a long way. When you put together a team edit of any kind, avoid showing the same 3 people over and over. Try to include everybody. If you're going to criticize one of your studs, sometimes it's as simple as, "Hey, FYI, I'm gonna go at you pretty hard in this film session real quick."
Yeah.
And that way they're like, "Oh, okay. Cool." They're going to get less defensive. And let's be honest, the main reason people check out in any kind of team film is they're getting defensive and they don't like what the coach said, right? But
they don't feel it's for them.
So it's got to be film, right? Or some kind of culture building. Sometimes it's just having meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
A practice I saw a few years ago, or I guess a method I saw a few years ago for team building was so oftentimes in the G League, the low guy on staff has to drive the bus for the opposing team. Home team is responsible for transportation for the visitors, and so I was the low guy on the staff in Windy City, and I was driving the bus. And South Bay Lakers are in town, and you know those little like question cards that they're like conversation cards that
I got some here. Yeah, I got some here at the desk. I know the ones you're on about. Yeah.
So what they did on the bus ride, knowing it was a 30-minute bus ride, they did 2 or 3 of those questions where they asked the question and they went around. Every single person on the bus had to answer it. And some of them were like deep, meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
Some of them were low-key funny. Hey, like if you could live in any one movie, what would it be? Some was, what's your greatest fear? You know, there's a lot of stuff you can learn, and that's a productive thing that hopefully translates to winning games down the line when you're finally in a gym. Every bit of cohesiveness helps. But at the same time, like when a player has an opportunity to talk and be heard, they're going to be engaged and they're going to be thoughtful about what they say in front of the whole team. And sometimes putting them on a spot on that kind of thing where there is no right or wrong answer can be beneficial for engagement. No,
that's awesome. Ben, it's been awesome having a chat, and I really do appreciate you. I know I've got Luke on the line. I've got some questions here.
Luke can wait. Got a family to worry about.
We got guys and no guys in here, and I must admit the text message I had from Ben was he was just going to come in here and heckle people. So that doesn't surprise me at all from you. Off the back of that,
it's not like Luke has some new job that he's got to.
Yeah. We want to show him off. We want to get him out here. But look, I know I've got some other questions, but I'll get them to you. I'll get those questions to you, Ben, so guys can get an answer on it, and I'll get your Twitter handle out to people as well. Ben's he's a pretty open guy, as you can tell, loves to share his story as well, which is unreal. And yeah, once again, Ben, I just, for me personally, I appreciate you jumping on today.
Absolutely. I'll throw my email and my Twitter in the chat. I don't really tweet much, but you can reach me on it.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks, Coach. We're gonna